Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Eugene's November 14th, 2025 program, the Eugene Airport, What is the Cost of Sanctuary? My name is Thomas Hiura. I serve as president of City Club, and I'm pleased to welcome you to another of the many forums we've held since 1990 in the name of our mission to build community vision through open inquiry. City Club is lucky to be a trusted, open, and independent voice for Eugene.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready? Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay. My name is Eric Jura, in case you forgot. In 1987, Oregon became the first state in the country to pass a statewide law prohibiting state and local police and government from helping federal authorities with immigration enforcement. Oregon reaffirmed and strengthened this commitment in 2021 by passing the Sanctuary Promise Act. As surprising as it may seem, the federal government does not always see eye to eye with state government. Using a process that has been upheld by the Supreme Court, the federal government has used monetary incentives and at times disincentives to enforce its will upon state governments. For example, in 1968, the federal government used grants to encourage states to pass laws requiring the use of seatbelts. In 1984, the federal government threatened to withhold transportation funding from states which did not pass laws setting a minimum drinking age of 21. The current administration is also using similar tactics. In April of this year, the Eugene Airport discovered that to begin receiving certain grant funding from the Department of Transportation, which is necessary for airport operations, they would have to agree to cooperate in the enforcement of federal immigration law. Signing on to this agreement would be a violation of Oregon's sanctuary laws. Foregoing the grants would imperil the continued operation and expansion of the airport. On the advice of the Eugene City Attorney, the grant assurances were not accepted, and the funding was paused. This fall, as a result of injunctive relief from federal courts, most of the grants have been restored. It should be noted, however, that the federal government has appealed that court decision. Today, we have three knowledgeable members of our community who will help us connect the dots about the importance of the airport to Lane County and the surrounding region. To make maximum use of our time, I will not read their complete bios. In order of appearance, Catherine Stephen is an accredited airport executive and came to the Eugene Airport in January of 2007 and now serves as airport director, overseeing its intricate and complex day-to-day operations. Greg Evans has served as City of Eugene Ward 6 counselor since 2013 and currently serves as council president. Greg has worked to advance the interests of the Eugene Airport, which in addition to its economic contributions to our region provides revenue to help support city government in Eugene. And finally, we have Brittany Quick-Warner, who is the president and CEO of the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, where she leads efforts to strengthen the region's economy. Brittany is also a member of the city's Airport Advisory Committee. Would you please give a warm welcome to our airport director, Catherine Stevens.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak with you today about these important airport issues. I'm going to frame things up a little bit. I know a concern definitely that Eric raised was our issue with our federal grant agreements earlier this year. And I'm going to be a little bit limited in what I can say because this is still an active legal challenge that is happening. But essentially, Eric had it put in a nutshell there. We had some delay in our ability to execute on our grant agreements because of that language, and then the City of Eugene was able to join one of the lawsuits challenging that. We did receive first a preliminary injunction and then some more permanent injunctive relief, and that allowed us to enter into a red line agreement between our city attorney's office and the FAA attorney. So we were able to strike that language and then be able to sign our grant agreements. Those cases, there's several of them, they are not final. And so the concern is still if the injunctive relief were to be overturned or if the ultimate outcome of these cases were not to be in our favor, then we would be in quite a precarious position having not having that federal funding coming in that we were anticipating. So as a result, we've had to slow down some of our capital program to make sure that essentially we have the ability to self-fund these projects that we've been moving forward until we're able to draw down on those grant funds. And then once those funds are in our bank, we feel a little more comfortable with it and can move to the next project. So the result has been slowing our roll a little bit. A huge shout out to airport staff and city staff who've worked to try to do our best to get those grant agreements signed and get the projects underway again. But we had about $14 million on the line, and let's see, 400,000 of it went away permanently because the DOT decided not to fund energy-related projects. That's kind of the simplest way I can put that. But we had several other major projects that did move forward, and so I can detail those for you in the Q&A section if you want to know more information, but essentially we've been able to move forward with 3 major projects, including receiving a $5 million grant back that we thought we had lost forever, but it was resurrected thanks to some work that our congressional delegation did, and that is the expansion of Concourse A. So if y'all have been to the airport lately, you probably have seen how crowded we are on a regular basis multiple times during the day. So this will provide some much needed relief to expand that Concourse A waiting area. So with that frame up, I have just a couple of other notes, and then what I really am excited about showing you today is the launch of our Liftoff EUG campaign, which will be a feasibility study for an even greater expansion of the Eugene Airport. So, granny glasses on. Just some notes for you. Since 2019, our passenger numbers have increased by 41%, and that includes pulling about 14% of those passengers back from PDX, all those people driving up to the Portland International Airport. So we've made some headway there, keeping our local passengers flying local. Even so, 29% of our passengers in our regional catchment area is what it's called. They're making that drive still up to PDX. And with the terminal building at the Eugene Airport at capacity, or frankly over capacity at this point, it's really unlikely that that's going to change until we have additional gates that are added at our airport. And so I just wanted to kind of frame that up for you and then talk a little bit more about the Concourse A expansion that's going to be, it's out actually on the street right now in an RFP, and the construction should start this spring. It will add 7,000 square feet to an underutilized connector bridge as a central shared seating area for all of the Concourse A gates. And this expansion also allows for construction of an ADA emergency exit lift. It improves accessibility for all passengers, and we'll have some upgrades to existing restrooms, enhancing safety and overall passenger experience, with the added benefit of accommodating more passengers, job creation, and increased airport revenue. So, as I mentioned, that project was postponed initially, but then was able to be resurrected, and so it's about an $18 million project with that. I mentioned a $5 million in the Airport Terminal Program FAA grant, and then our local share on that is 6.25%. We are also looking at additional funding sources just to try to continue to reduce the financial burden on the airport to build this. It's complicated, but basically because we put the project on hold and then we're surprised when we needed to bring it up again to get it done. We didn't want to lose that $5 million grant again, so we just found a way to make the project work. But any additional grant funds that we can get to support that project will be very helpful. So we're looking at a Connect Oregon grant round that's coming up in January, and then also some congressionally directed spending, hopefully. All right, so now we'll go to the Liftoff EUG presentation. Thank you, Andrew. He's one of our assistant directors in the back there. He's going to be forwarding slides for me. So how many of you have flown out of the Eugene Airport in the last year? Love that. I hope you're going to lots of fun places. So you already know it's the convenience over driving to Portland, dealing with the traffic, dealing with the more expensive parking, far out parking, and the ease of accessibility. We really just have short walk from our parking lots, quick and friendly security, which shout out to our federal workers who have been working without pay for a very long time now, both the TSA agents, our air traffic controllers, and a couple of other federal employees that work on our airport. I really appreciate all of them, and they have had such great attitudes during this time. We've provided some acts of kindness to them, delivering some treats and providing some lunches here and there. So I know they've been appreciative of that, and we appreciate them. The savings, really, we have competitive fares now, and we have for quite some time, and people are figuring that out, and that's why we've seen such passenger growth. Our parking rates are lower, and there's really no need to drive north to stay at a hotel. So next slide, please. The Eugene Airport serves a large region that includes 5 counties. 1.8 million passengers travel through EUG each year, and 71% of those passengers are from our local region, and they choose to fly EUG. But there's an opportunity for almost 30% more to make that same choice and fly EUG. Next slide. So here are our current challenges. We reached airline gate capacity in May of 2021. PDX offers more direct flights, and our airline partners would like to add more at EUG. However, our terminal is at capacity, or as I said, over capacity, and that makes it very difficult to add new destinations. Our facility needs to grow to better serve our region, both residents and visitors. Next slide. So considering all the benefits, imagine if the airport was even better. Next slide. So plans are underway to better serve our community in the near future and for many years to come. First, by expanding our current Concourse A passenger waiting area, which I just talked about. Then, with the addition of a new Concourse C and supporting infrastructure, we will essentially double the size of the Eugene Airport. And this will allow for more commercial flights and better charter facilities for the Ducks, Beavers, and visiting athletics teams. We will also expand our parking with surface lots, which are not shown on this slide. So here's our current route map, and the planned expansion will accommodate even more nonstop routes. So take a look at that, and then here are just some of the routes that are possible with the terminal expansion. Atlanta, Orlando, Boston, Hawaii, these are the routes most in demand. More nonstop flights means the greater capacity in our terminal facility will mean more nonstop flights to more destinations. A dedicated charter facility, perfect for sports teams and special events, and greater convenience for passengers. So now that you've seen the potential nonstop destinations, let's look at how flying out of EUG, instead of driving to PDX for a flight, actually has a lower impact on the environment. Right now, 29% of passengers in our region drive up to Portland to fly. That's nearly 250,000 trips to Portland each year. And if an expanded Eugene Airport can persuade those passengers to fly local, it will keep more than 450 cars off of I-5 each day driving to PDX, eliminating 12,500 miles of driving from our roads daily. And this will save a net 5 metric tons of CO2 pollution a day, or over 3,200 tons per year. So it's a significant lower environmental impact if people are staying local and flying local. So let's compare the Eugene Airport's growth forecast with the new additions. The number of passengers are projected to more than double over the next 15 years. And without an airport expansion, demand, and more importantly, the economic benefit that comes from that demand will go elsewhere. Nationwide, airports support 12.8 million jobs. Now let's take a look at the Eugene Airport's impact on the local jobs and the broader economy, and how this proposal will impact that metric. The Eugene Airport currently supports more than 10,000 local jobs, both directly and indirectly. Personal income, business revenue, and local purchases are all substantial. 43 million a year is generated in state and local tax revenues, and EUG creates a regional economic impact of $1.6 billion. Jobs, with the expansion, you can see the economic impact is even more substantial. Jobs, personal income, business income, and tax revenues more than double. Regional economic impact grows to $3.6 billion annually. So the bottom line is, the sooner we build Concourse C, the sooner we can generate an additional $2 billion a year in economic impact, totaling $3.6 billion a year to our regional economy. So we've identified nearly half of the funding that's needed. However, with traditional bonds, which would be backed by passenger facility charges, we'll have to wait for 30 years before being able to begin work on Concourse C and its supporting infrastructure. Waiting that long is really unacceptable, so we are determined to find new and non-traditional funding of sources. Sources of funding, I think is what I meant to say. Instead of spending 30 years waiting to build the Concourse C through traditional means, let's do it now. Let's generate an additional $60 billion in economic impact. Let's begin realizing the benefits now. Let's capture otherwise lost future income, and let's gain more jobs, more destinations, and a better travel experience for everyone. So this slide shows a QR code. You also have some flyers on your table that include those. You can also fold that into a paper airplane if you want to have some fun. We want to hear from you about your experience at EUG. So this will take you to a 10-minute survey. We'd like to hear from everyone who lives within our catchment area, and please feel free to share this survey with your staff, employees, friends, family. If you want to get updates also on this project as it progresses, you can go to the Liftoff EUG website, and that has actually quite a bit more detail in it to explore. So just a few final thoughts, and then I will ask Councilor Evans to join me up here at the podium. It's really going to be critically important for the expansion of EUG to be high on everyone's priority list, from both the universities within our catchment area, to economic development organizations, to private enterprise, and to our individual citizens that live within our catchment area. We anticipate the creation and formation of a coalition focused specifically on EUG expansion in 2026, a strong coalition that will help us maximize state and federal funding. Enabling projects will take a few more years to complete, so we have an opportunity to gain pledges of financial support over about a span of 4 to 5 years to achieve this. And we'll be working on securing appropriations, additional grant funding to support the 2030 construction launch for the Concourse C, with probably about a 2-year timeline to build Concourse C, with completion anticipated in about 2032. And so through this Liftoff EUG feasibility study, we will be exploring all options: traditional funding, expanded federal support, state funding, public-private partnerships, naming rights, and perhaps benefactor funding. Think the University of Oregon model on that one. So with that, I'd like to introduce Councilor Greg Evans, who has a few more thoughts on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the City Club for the invitation to speak this afternoon about the airport. The airport is near and dear to me because I live 7 minutes away from it. My wife and I bought a house in 2000 in the Bethel area, and we have lived there ever since. Been involved in a variety of different efforts, both with our active Bethel citizens organization and a number of other ventures that we've been involved with over the years. Before I came to City Council in 2013, I served on the board of the Fair Board twice, Lane County Fair Board, and also the LTD Board of Directors. So I spent 7 years on that, and I'm partially responsible for the West Eugene MX. One of the things that we have in this community as far as transportation is concerned that has led the country, the rest of the country, in bus rapid transit. So as we are continuing to build our transportation networks, I will also mention that in my role with Lane Transit District, I also served on the National APTA Board, the American Public Transportation Association, and in the National League of Cities, where I was chair of Transportation and Infrastructure for the NLC in 2017. So I did a lot of work in that sphere with Councilor Taylor, who is at the front down here, and we've traveled together. Our big joke was, people would come up to me and said, "What are you doing with I said, "Look, I'm her bodyguard, okay?" So, yeah, I was always tell people that Betty and I would get a kick out of it. Yeah, I'm Betty's bodyguard, so don't mess with her. But to go over and not to repeat a lot of what Catherine has already presented to you, I want to just talk a little bit about the passenger growth at EUG, the fact that in this region we have additional pressures as far as the number of people who are traveling in the Pacific Northwest and the overloads at SeaTac and PDX that are now affecting the regional airports like Eugene, Redmond, down to Medford. Our need for investment in this sector, in this particular sector, transportation, is critical to our development here, our economic development here in Eugene. I can't tell you enough about what we have been trying to do over the years and improve our travel ability to retain, people that are coming here, that are visiting here either for football games or other recreational activities, and that are pumping money into our community and making it so that our children and our neighbors can have good jobs, they can work here, and we can continue our investments in our public infrastructure that is sorely lacking right now. So the investment in the airport is critical, particularly since the things as far as air travel are continuing to change and continuing to grow. That leakage from Portland is going to continue to happen. And so I think that we really need to be prepared and be visionary as to what the Eugene Airport is going to look like in the future and how it's going to stimulate and sustain our economic growth as we move forward. Also, looking at our capital improvement program for the airport. So Catherine did talk about the investments that are critical from our federal government, from our partnership with the federal government in transportation to continue to make this growth happen. I can't tell you about projects that we have had sitting on the table for almost as long as I've been here, 40 years, when we start looking at the development of the airport, the addition of a C concourse, and the expansion of the A concourse so we can take in larger jets and have more traffic. But we also have issue with having the kind of facilities here that's going to attract people for tournaments, soccer, baseball, softball. I have, in the last 40 some odd years, have traveled a lot of miles up and down I-5 only to spend my family's money in another space where we don't have the spaces and the recreation necessary to attract and retain these kinds of tournaments. Lower impact on our environment, to some degree. I mean, most of our environmental impact is coming from transportation anyway. But we have got to be able to have good, clean industry that is going to come in here and provide the kind of jobs that our children need. My son and daughter-in-law just bought a house here. And my daughter-in-law's family is from Hawaii. They worked there for a couple of years, wanted to have a family. My granddaughter was born in Hawaii. My son and daughter-in-law also taught in China, and now they're here in Eugene. And looking at the price for housing in this community and our lack of economic opportunities for our young people is incredibly disturbing. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we have happen is that we use the levers that we have in this community for the kind of economic development that we want to see. You know, I want to see kids out there, you know, in off of Highway 99 playing ball and, you know, enjoying our community and contributing the kind of dollars that we want to see that moves around in the community, particularly for our local businesses. So again, wrapping this up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brittany Quick-Warner, who is our executive director of the Eugene Chamber of Commerce. She can talk to you a little bit more about what the emphasis is, what the vision is. This is one of the few areas in our community where we have a vision for what we want the airport to look like and how that vision integrates regionally across this community and into Douglas County, into Lynn County, Lane County being the center of that we really need to invest in our transportation system, whether that is through the air or through the ground. But we are having continual pressures on that system, and so we're going to have to grow, we're going to have to expand, but we're going to have to do it the right way. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up and turn it over to Brittany, and then I believe we'll be going to Q&A after that. All right? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much to the City Club of Eugene for hosting this conversation and for inviting me to join you all as well. I love talking about the Eugene Airport. My friends jokingly talk about making me a Eugene Airport fangirl t-shirt. And it's not just because I can roll out of bed and walk on a plane in 45 minutes, which is the joy of my life as a last-minute person, but it's also because the Eugene Airport is one of the clearest examples of a public asset that directly shapes our economic future. I'll start with this. If you care about economic growth, if you care about climate action, if you care about talent attraction, or to Greg's point, retention, if you care about local business success, or just quality of life in this region, you should care deeply about the Eugene Airport. In my role, I talk with employers large and small every single day. And no matter what sector they're in, healthcare, manufacturing, tech, tourism, universities, small businesses, they all say the same thing. A strong airport is essential to a strong and thriving community. It's essential for hiring, it's essential for selling products, it's essential for bringing in customers, students, experts, investors, and it's essential for staying competitive with cities our size and competing, frankly, with cities much larger. We punch way above our weight class when we talk about our airport and communities that we compare ourselves with. And the data proves it. 10,000 local jobs, like Catherine mentioned, are supported by Eugene Airport activity today in our region. The airport generates $43 million a year in state and local tax revenue. And it moves $1.6 billion through our regional economy every single year. Those numbers are not just academic. They translate into paychecks and small business customers, hotel stays, busy restaurants, and the economic engine that keeps this region moving. I know a lot of people here, and I was thinking about this as I was listening to Catherine's conversation, a lot of people hear numbers like 1.6 billion and they think, okay, but what does that actually mean? So for those of you who don't read economic impact studies a lot, to make it straightforward, first, there's direct impact. So people who actually work at the airport. Think airline employees, TSA, rental cars, food service, maintenance crews. Those are all the local jobs that are impacted. That's our direct impact. Second, there's indirect. So those are the businesses and organizations that rely on the airport. Hotels, tourism, manufacturing that ships goods and services out of our region. Universities recruiting students, tech companies flying in talent, etc. And then there's the induced impact, and that's really where we see a ton of benefit in our community. So that's everyone who earns a paycheck at or because of the airport, and then they go out and spend those dollars in our local economy, at grocery stores, at restaurants, at hardware stores, at childcare centers. That money circulates over and over and over again in our regional community. All of that together, today you get 1.6 billion, and with this expansion, you don't just double it, you more than double it. That is the part that we should all get really excited about. With this expansion of Concourse's ANC, jobs more than double, personal income more than doubles, business revenue more than doubles, local tax contribution more than doubles, and the regional economic impact grows. You don't get that kind of return very often. I can guarantee you there are not a lot of assets worth investing in where a dollar creates 2 or 3 more back into the community. But airports are the exception. Right now, we are holding ourselves back. Passenger demand has grown 40% since 2019. That's only 6 years ago, and the terminal supply just cannot keep up. We lose travelers to Portland, like Catherine mentioned, not because people want to drive 2 hours, but because our current capacity doesn't give them the options that they need to fly as frequently or as affordably as they need to. If we want Eugene to thrive economically, culturally, and socially, we have to build the infrastructure that matches that. I have the pleasure of serving on the Airport Advisory Committee, and just recently we created an Airport Advisory Committee Finance Subcommittee to really dive into a handful of things: the long-term financial planning, the capital needs, the growth projections, and how to make sure the airport remains strong and resilient. There's great folks at that table looking at this and really trying to have some deep analysis around what is the right path forward. It's this shared problem solving that I think we need in this community. Here's the big point I want to make. No matter what angle you look at this, economically, from a climate impact perspective or livability, the Eugene Airport expansion is something we should all be able to support. It's more flights, which means more capacity for jobs, revenues, business growth. From a climate perspective, it's fewer cars on I-5. From a livability perspective, as Catherine and Greg mentioned, it improves quality of life. It makes it easier for you to see your family and to take vacations and to attract workers and to host conferences and to stay connected to the world. This project matters to all of us, no matter what angle you look at it from. And it's not a side project. The Eugene Airport expansion should not be a side project. We could very easily look at the numbers that Catherine shared with us and have a scarcity mindset to say that's way too much money for us to realistically put together and achieve this expansion. But I think we should take a step back and figure out, how do we say yes? How do we have an abundance mindset in this moment and realize it's one of the most impactful investments that we could make for the next decade in our region? And we have to do it within the next decade. We can't wait 10, 20, 30 years because that opportunity will go somewhere else. We have it right now. We should come together around a vision that benefits really anyone, like I said, from whatever angle that you're looking at this from. If we approach it with collaboration and urgency and a shared belief in what Eugene can be, and not just Eugene, but this entire region, then I think we can come up with the dollars it's going to take. I think that we can have an abundance of resources and support, and I think we should do it together. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin our Q&A quite soon, but first a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station KLCC for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. In Eugene, they broadcast on 89.7 FM. For those listening at home or in the car right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We are truly honored to have you. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived at klcc.org, as well as on our YouTube channel and the City Club of Eugene podcast. We'll have a short break before returning for questions, so feel free to line up and we'll get those questions answered shortly. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Fromuth. I'm a member of City Club of Eugene, and I'd like to start with the title of the program called Eugene Airport, What is the Price of Sanctuary? No one except Eric, thank you, addressed that in your remarks. There are some 34,000 immigrants who live here in Eugene. They produce almost $7 billion in tax revenue each year. The requests that the federal government has made to the city and to the airport relate to dealing with these immigrants and our population. I would like to know from each of you how you feel about the sanctuary as it relates to the airport and what are the other sources we can find to find revenue to build the airport, which I think is a great idea. Thank you.
Well, I'll just start this off and say, because I am a city employee, I'm not going to make political statements. I will tell you, just from a running the airport standpoint, it has been very challenging to navigate this. And like I gave kudos to the staff earlier, it's been a lot of work on the part of the staff to get to this point, both the city attorney staff and the airport staff as well. So we appreciate that support and glad that we're moving forward at this point. And then others can answer that question.
Okay, on this one, I'll speak for myself, and I won't speak for my colleagues, but I think most of my colleagues on council and the mayor would agree with me. We are a sanctuary city by definition because we're living in a sanctuary state. And so we will follow the laws and the directives of the governor of this state in terms of her resistance to federal engagement in ICE or anything that looks like we are violating our principles as a sanctuary state. So we're not, we have instructed our police department not to participate with ICE. We've instructed other areas of our government that we are not participating with ICE. So that is where we are, that's where we stand. If you find us doing something different than that, then you need to let us know.
Thanks. I'll chime in since you asked all three of our opinions. So the Eugene Chamber, just to be clear, doesn't have, this is not an issue that we've taken a position on, not because we don't want to, because it just isn't a topic that has come to us. But what I can say is that what's happening across the country related to immigration is wildly, I think, negatively impacting our economy as well. I think that when you look at the workforce and just look at demographic data in our country, we're talking about reduced birth rates, right? We're talking about increased ages, and it's just less people, right? Our immigrants in this community contribute greatly to our economy, contribute greatly to the economy across the country, right? And industry experts know that and they recognize that, and this is a place that as a business community, like, I am never engaging with folks who are not acknowledging and accepting of the impact and the positive impact, I should say, of immigrants in our community, right? We need to be saying yes to more workers, to people who are contributing, to supporting them in their livelihoods and the way that they're living, and I don't think that we should be making that a political conversation. It's unfortunate, right, at the airport that this has to be made a political conversation, and it's a critical infrastructure. I believe that we are going to hold as a community to the values of our state, and I think that's what we should be doing. But we've got to figure out a way to talk about and recognize the importance of immigrants in our community and the role that they're playing and the families that they're supporting, and that this should not be a political conversation. These are people that we need to be supporting. And so I believe in what the city and the airport have done to hold that ground.
Hello, Doug Bovee here, City Club member. Thank you very much to all three of you for the discussion, a very important topic. Actually, I don't really have a question. I have a suggestion, and that is that we add resilience to the pillars of expansion, the value of expansion, because a bigger airport creates more opportunity for safety in the middle of a Cascadia subduction earthquake. It's a statewide facility in that regard. So, expansion, I'm all for it because, and that's one of the reasons. The other thing is, Terminal C will have a huge roof, which will have great capacity for solar panels. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Doug. And you're absolutely right. And part of the C Concourse group of projects includes a seismic retro fit for the main terminal building, the terminal building that exists right now. And yes, I think definitely looking at future energy sources is something that will go into that planning and design process.
Joel Corin, City Club member. I have a question about financing Terminal C. You spoke about non-traditional methods of financing. I'd like to hear a little more about what they are, and more importantly, has any other airport been able to finance an expansion project through non-traditional means?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So just to put it in a framework, our traditional sources of funding are airport-generated revenues, passenger facility charges that can only be used for certain types of projects, and then our airport improvement program funds that come through the Airport and Airways Trust Fund through the FAA, and there are entitlement funds, and then there are discretionary funds, which are somewhat competitive. We've had several different new funding sources over the past few years, including bill funds, which have been very helpful to help forward some of our projects. But it's just not getting us as far down the road as we need to. And so when we did our really in-depth financial analysis of what it will take to build the Concourse C, which we've already identified that we need through a different study, we realized, oh boy, we can get about halfway there, and then the other half we can't fund through traditional means. Not that we won't continue to seek additional grant funding in that way for the Concourse C group of projects, but we just can't count on them at this point. So that's why we're looking at congressionally directed spending, some additional state funding beyond what the Connect Oregon program has provided. We love getting Connect Oregon money, but the dollar numbers are very low comparatively to what we need. And so the state historically has invested pretty heavily in the Port of Portland, and we think it's now our time as the second largest commercial service airport in the state to have some state investment in our facility. And then we are also, because we want to really explore every possible means, I have a great team put together through Terrell Group and Carrie Westland to take a look at all of these other ideas that other airports have used successfully. We haven't found this exact model that we're looking at right now. This is my pie-in-the-sky version of what I think we should go for. But we have found airports that have successfully executed naming rights, that have used some benefactor funding. So Provo is an example of benefactor funding. Palm Springs is a good example of naming rights. But what we're trying to do is find all of those best ideas that have been executed out there and then expand upon it. So one thing I like to talk about is the university model, and specifically the University of Oregon model, where you have a facility that needs to be built, say the Knight Science Complex. You have a benefactor, a group of benefactors usually that come together. They can build it faster, better, smarter, and then gift it back to the university. And so my pitch is the airport really is an extension of the universities within our catchment area. They couldn't be operating at the level that they operate at without an airport, and in turn they support our airport as well. So my pitch to potential benefactors is, by investing in our airport, we support all of the other investments you've already made at these universities and give you the ability to expand even further. So, and I'm talking mostly about research, but also athletic teams and students and community in general. And Brittany talked about kind of those direct, indirect, and the dollars that continue to be spent out in our community. It's that same kind of synergy that's between the university and the airport. I don't know if maybe you have some things to add.
Yeah, and I would say there's actually a ton of examples of airports that have been funded through alternative sources, whether it's private funding, et cetera, But to be frank, one of the challenges that our airport, I think, will have in some of those conversations and that we need to explore as a community, we are one of a very few airports across the country that exist as a department of the city. Or excuse me, a division of a department of the city, right? And so that, just the structure and the way that our kind of governance within our community is, that's different and unique, and I think that there's pros and cons to that. And I think that's part of this conversation, from my opinion, from an outsider, not as a city staff person. I think that we need to be looking at that to say, is that the best model for us as a community as we're talking about growth and expansion? Absolutely, I think it was when we created it at the size of the community that we are. But I think it should be part of sort of an open discussion as well.
Thank you.
Charlie Quinn, City Club member. I had to travel during the most recent government shutdown, and I thought about baking cookies and bringing them to the TSA agents and realized immediately that would be a very bad idea. But I was really happy to hear that you were able to give them some treats and free lunches. For the next government shutdown, would it be possible to have a QR code or some easy way for those of us who feel guilty while traveling during that time to contribute towards that?
Yeah, it's so tricky because they can only accept certain things, and that's kind of why we just had to go with, bringing them donuts or lunch or something. But I will say that Food for Lane County actually reached out to the airport and wanted to bring one of their mobile food pantries. And they did that a couple of days and connected with our federal workers and then made sure that they knew where the other pantry locations were in the community. And I so appreciated that they took the initiative to do that. So there are ways to help out. I mean, I would say maybe it's not a QR code going to the airport. It's maybe a QR code going to Food for Lane County for those efforts.
Thomas Hura, City Club member since 2019. I kind of want to ask about the topic of the program, the title being the price of sanctuary, and the $5 million that was sort of lost out, and trying to balancing, I know this is a little bit of a sloppy question, I'm kind of free-flowing it, balancing the interests that I think are both important from people who are fervent human rights advocates in the Eugene community and people who believe strongly in economic development. I believe that both are very important, and I also think that some of my friends in the human rights advocacy community would say there's no cost or price you can put on human rights, and sometimes in the world today, people do that. And so how could we respond to sort of those concerns and say that there's no amount of money and investment that should allow us to even consider compromising on any of our human rights goals?
Well, I'll let Councilor Evans answer that, but I'll just say we did get the $5 million back, and we salvaged all of the funding, the $14 million, other than the $400,000 that just the grant opportunity went away. So we're winning at this point.
I'll say this, human rights and economic development are not mutually exclusive issues. I think that there is significant intersection between the interest for human rights and the need for economic development. So at the bottom of all of this is what price do communities pay for economic development, the kind of economic development that we're talking about that will provide jobs with a lower impact on our environment and maximize what we need in terms of jobs for families development and for our growth in property tax revenue. As you already know, we in this state, the only way that we're really paying for anything, schools, local governments, and most everything that we've got in this state is through our property tax system. And it was knocked off balance, I'll just say this, 35 years ago with ballot measure 5 and then ballot measure 50 that has constrained the growth in our property tax system. And we right now do not have the revenues to pay for the basics that we are seeing deficiencies in public safety, and then also being able to support those things that provide for the livability that we all want here. The parks, the libraries, everything else that folds into human rights concerns as well as economic stability and vision. I have a son and daughter-in-law that just bought a house here, and they're struggling, you know. I mean, we've got, you know, my 3-year-old granddaughter and now my one and only grandson that was born in September, and I'm looking at their future. They're both public employees, and they're teachers, just like in the family. But it's going to be, you know, it's hard for a lot of folks who are coming here, who have grown up here. I always told them, I said, I didn't move here to raise my family, for my family to have to leave here to make a living. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of the children that I've worked with over the years in my capacity at LCC, as well as in our community, across our community, is being able to find decent family wage jobs so that you can raise your children here comfortably in a community where you have minimal violence and minimal issues that other cities have that we don't have. So I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah, I would say quickly, I say this to my staff all the time, and it's why I do what I do at the chamber. To me, economic development and business success is not an end. It's a means to an end. And the end is that people can live happy, healthy lives. And so I'm with Greg. I don't think those are two mutually exclusive things. I think they actually are highly dependent upon each other.
Thank you. I also want to relay a question from online because people can leave questions on our YouTube live stream. Theo D asks, the passenger facilities investment is great. I'm wondering if there's any investment in other secondary airport activities like general aviation, cargo, maintenance, manufacturing, academy, support, etc. Yeah, that was what was written.
Like LCC, yeah. I guess my best answer to that is we have an airport master plan that details kind of all aspects of the operation at the airport, and it talks about each of those different areas that were just mentioned, general aviation, the cargo area, and those kinds of things. Where we get constrained is how we are able to spend money, especially if it's coming from the federal government, from the Airport and Airways Trust Fund. And then, as I mentioned, the passenger facility charges, there's a very specific things you can spend that money on. So the only free money we have to spend on things at our discretion would be airport generated revenue generated on the airport. And often we're using those funds for our match on the federal grants, and other like, you know, the Connect Oregon also has a pretty hefty match. And so most of that revenue is tied then to those, the federal grants as well. But a good question, and I welcome ideas if people have other ideas about how that might work.
Okay, Kelly, we got about 2.5 minutes. Go for it.
Kelly Johnson, City Club member, also big fangirl of Eugene Airport.
We can wear t-shirts together.
Yeah, love the artwork, love the storytelling machine. But I have noticed as the demand has increased, also the parking has gotten kind of challenging. And you mentioned parking would be a part of this, but I was just hoping you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, parking lots are really expensive to build, and we have expanded. We're actually in the middle of another reconfiguration where we realigned where our rental car facility is, and then we're recapturing some of that lot. So the Concourse C group of projects will have to also include additional parking expansion. We have land to the north of the existing economy lot that is where the next, you know, logical place for parking expansion will go. I'm really trying to avoid a parking structure because it's very, very expensive. And so I'm hoping that by the time that we get to that threshold, that there'll be things like electric automated vehicles that will drive you to the airport and then drive itself back and put it in your garage at home.
I was going to say, or an LTV line.
Yeah, we're working on that now. And transportation on the Highway 99 corridor is critical. It needs to be improved. But I will say this, and a lot of people don't realize this, that on average, in order to build a parking space, it's $75,000 per space. That's what the cost is. So when you start thinking about parking garages or any parking space, that is what the cost is. And I won't go into all the details about what's involved in that, but it's an extremely expensive proposition to build parking.
I'm Jim Dodson.
I have to apologize. We've run out of time. Thank you all for the wonderful questions, and please give our panel a round of applause.
Please join me again in thanking Counselor Greg Evans, Brittany Quick-Warner, and Catherine Stevens. This has been our November 14th, 2025 conversation at the City Club of Eugene. We'll be back here next week at Wow Hall on Friday, November 21st at noon. That program is called the Pacific Coast Intermodal Port Project, its impact on the region and Eugene. It's sure to be a great forum, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time at City Club.